This song's about Maddie. No girl, that song must be about Joe. Everyone's wrapped up in that mess. Meanwhile, did Taylor just call herself a low-key alcoholic? Hey everyone, welcome back to Tea with Bree. If you're new here, an extra special welcome. This is a place where we girly goss, where we take a 1-minute story and we turn it into a 20, 30, 40-minute story. We get cozy and we sip our tea with our girls. So if that sounds interesting to you, join us. Okay, so as the title says, today we are talking about the Tortured Poets Department. Now that I've listened to the album over and over again, like truly over and over again, like to an unhealthy level, things are sticking out to me, y'all. Like when I initially listened, and I have a reaction video posted on my channel, but when I initially listened to the album, I was so expecting a Joe this album. I was here for it. I was sat for it. I was prepared for it. The teasers we got on Midnights and maybe even Evermore and Folklore were not enough for me. I wanted the hate to come out. I wanted the rage to come out. I wanted to know, like, what had this relationship really been like? So that preconception colored my entire interpretation of the Tortured Poets Department. However, now that I've re-listened to it literally an unhealthy amount of times, so many things are sticking out to me. It's like, I feel like I've gleaned so much interesting information about Taylor, about her life, about this period of her life. And let me tell y'all, the most interesting thing about this album is not the men featured on it. And that's the tea. So that's what we're talking about today. We're going to get into lyrical themes. We're going to get into different visual motifs of the album and discuss like all the crazy amounts of information and themes that are prevailing that actually kind of render who it's about a bit inconsequential. And I'm like all y'all, like I love some girly goss. I have listened to Taylor Swift for so long. I remember when she used to like bold certain letters in the lyrics on the albums, and you would have to like try to figure out who each song was about in this like weird retroactive way. And so it's like we've been trained to do that. So it's like no disrespect to anyone who's just desperately trying to figure out like which song everyone's about. When I first listened to the album, that's the exact same thing I was doing, honeys. There's nothing wrong with it. However, this video today is hopefully going to challenge, may even inspire you to listen to this album with, you know, new ears, fresh ears, in a way that, again, what man is this song about, blah, blah, blah. It's like the song is about Taylor. The song is about what she was dealing with, and we're going to get into it today. If we talk about what Taylor herself said about the album, I'll read what she put on Instagram. She said, "The Tortured Poets Department is an anthology of new works that reflect events, opinions, and sentiments from a fleeting and fatalistic moment in time, one that was both sensational and sorrowful in equal measure. This period of the author's life is now over. The chapter closed and boarded up. There is nothing to avenge, no scores to settle once wounds have healed. Upon further reflection, a good number of them turned out to be self-inflicted. The writer is of the firm belief that our tears become holy in the form of ink on a page. Once we have spoken our saddest story, we can be free of it." And it's her saddest story. It's so much more than a relationship. It's what those relationships revealed. Am I onto something here, kids? When she's talking about like her saddest story, like all the thoughts, feelings, emotions, crazy things that this period in time brought up in her, I feel like we can't just make it about like a Maddie story or a Joe story. Like it's her story first and foremost. And I think the Tortured Poets Department visuals, the first visuals that we've seen from that, which is the video Fortnight, which she said kind of represent like the visuals that she had in her head while she was creating the entire album. They're very haunting. I mean, they're all in black and white. It's very dark. Like there's not a lot of hope or joy, I would say, exhibited in the video. Like one of the first visuals, it looks like she's almost in a wedding dress, handcuffed to a bed. She's got like a wedding garter on, and then you see her transition into like widow's garb, right? And then she's immediately having to go back to work at her typewriter. I can do it with a broken heart, anyone? It's like there's so many themes like that throughout the video. I mean, she is essentially in like an insane asylum. Like, let's talk about that. There's a lot of heartbreak motifs, depression, anger, rage, love. I mean, just the full spectrum of human emotion, honey. The full spectrum, she's got it in this video. But there's a darkness to it, you know? There's a darkness there. One of the first major themes that I notice when I'm like sociopathically listening to this album 800 million times back to back to back, is the enormous weight of her disappointment. You can reduce that down to like, oh, she's just devastated over losing this person. But I think it's more than that. I felt like a disappointment of when your own expectations for your life and the reality don't match up. And it's not just about, oh, I want to be with this person. A lot of us have dreams of getting a certain job or starting a family or getting married. Like, those are valuable dreams. Even as a feminist queen, girl, like, you can have those dreams. And I really felt like a lot of the songs were like really mourning the loss of feeling like she wanted to kind of move on to that next stage of life. And she had found potentially good people to do that with. And then realizing that that was not going to happen. She did an interview where she talked about Fortnite specifically, and she said, Fortnite is a song that exhibits a lot of the common themes that run throughout the album, one of which being fatalism, longing, pining away, lost dreams. Y'all, she calls out lost dreams as a huge theme of the album. I'm like, yeah, I felt that. It's like, I don't care if the song's about Maddie, I don't care if it's about Joe. What I'm getting from it is that you held these dreams for yourself, for your own life, and experienced so much disappointment when that's not how it panned out. I mean, let's take a look at the Tortured Poets Department lyrics, right? She says, at dinner, you take my ring off my middle finger and put it on the one people put wedding rings on. And that's the closest I've come to my heart exploding. It's this feeling of, I want this. I want that kind of relationship. I want that kind of love. I want that potential to, move forward in my life with someone, and then feeling the disappointment when that doesn't happen. Girl, we've all been there. It is such a universal, relatable feeling of, you want this job, you want this relationship, you want this house, you want to move to this place, and the expectations and reality sometimes just don't match up. She also mentions imaginary rings in Fresh Out the Slammer. In Florida, she even talks about being in that weird stage of life. Everyone's out partying or everyone's like getting married and having babies, and you're kind of caught in between these worlds. She talks about it in Florida. She says, and my friends all smell like weed or little babies, and this city reeks of driving myself crazy. Honey, I get it. It's like at some points you're like, I wanna move to the next step. Like, I feel mature enough, I feel grown enough, I want these things with somebody, and still it is not panning out. It can be heartbreaking, devastating. Even more devastating than losing someone is having to mourn that you have these dreams that are also lost, this future life that you envisioned. In Love of My Life, LOML, she dives deeper into this also. She says, you shit talked me under the table, talking rings and talking cradles. I wish I could unrecall how we almost had it all. So y'all, I'm not trying to say Taylor wants babies in marriage. I'm just saying all these lyrics are insinuating that she did have these dreams for her life, and / probably still does. And the pain of them not panning out is extreme and devastating and took her to a very dark place. The last song that kind of deals with this mismatch between reality and expectations is Guilty as Sin. She says this, if long-suffering propriety is what they want from me, they don't know how you've haunted me so stunningly. I choose you and me religiously. So here she's struggling less against the expectations and dreams that she has for her own life and reality, the difference between those two, and more she's talking about the difference between the fans and the public's expectations for her life and reality. She wants to be this person, she wants these things, and she struggles / rebels against this feeling of everyone else having these like expectations on her that are just unrealistic. And I think that point and that theme flows really nicely into the next big theme that I noticed from the album, which would be just the weight of being a public figure and the weight of it having existed so long as like a woman in the music industry, which I think we can all agree has not treated women historically extremely well, especially when you've been in it with artists like Beyonce, with artists like Taylor, where you've been in it from such a young age. And so you've really been through like multiple life cycles of this industry, whereas so many people pop up, burn out, pop up. It's like they have really existed in this space for so long and are very well equipped to speak to the toxicity and just the difficulty of existing in that kind of environment for such a long time. I mean, I think Guilty as Sin touched on that, which we just talked about in terms of the public's expectations of you. But like the songs that really resonated for me with this theme were kind of like But Daddy I Love Him, Who's Afraid of Little Old Me, Claire Bow, and I Can Do It with a Broken Heart. To me, those are all very intertwined with like public persona, with the music industry, and just with the weight of being a public figure. And some of the visuals that I saw when re-listening to these songs was like, but in Daddy I Love Him, you start to get this image of almost like Taylor as like this like wounded animal, this like caged wounded animal who's just been through so much. She's been through the ringer. She's had like everything bad said about her, but then also everything good said about her. But she's viewing herself and she's depicting herself as very much like this like crouching, afraid, wounded little thing. Like in Daddy I Love Him, she says, I just learned these people only raise you to cage you. Dutiful daughter, all my plans were laid. She's basically describing herself as like someone who's always doing the right thing, who's always trying to be, you know, perfect in a sense, which she talked about a lot on Miss Americana and a lot throughout the Lover era. But I think you sense the weight of that burden of expectation, like, and the impact that that has on her life and her well-being. She's trying to be like, but Daddy, I love him. I don't care what you guys say, but obviously the weight of that is significant. You're writing so many songs about it. Like the next one, Who's Afraid of Little Old Me? Y'all, first of all, quick aside, quick public service announcement from your girl, but I'm obsessed with this song in an unhealthy way. I feel like this song is crazy. It's sociopathic, and yet I relate to it so much. What does that say about me, y'all? Don't answer below. But it just reminds me of like being in grad school and just having these people like underestimate me, and I would give like a big talk, and the only comments from the male professors who were like my bosses was basically like, oh, you wore a really bright dress today. I'm like, are you serious right now? I just talked some genius shit about the brain, and all you're gonna talk to me about is the color my dress was? It's just like, I felt that rage of like, who is afraid of little old me? You just all underestimated me for so long, and guess what? You should be afraid of what I'm coming for all y'all. So it is crazy, it is sociopathic. However, it is also personally the song of my heart. But in that song, she says, but my bare hands paved their paths. You don't get to tell me about sad. This is speaking very much, I think, to the music industry and just like how she's felt. She's had to do so much work. I mean, let's talk about all the different work she's had to do. She's like, I kind of redefined the music industry from breaking into it at such a young age and then completely switching genres entirely, which was extremely rare at that point in time, to re-recording all of her work, to kind of doing that huge sexual assault trial where she countersued for $1. She's like, what are y'all kids bitching and moaning about? Like, I literally scratched this path, which again, we're kind of getting this like wounded animal analogy, like her hands, her little paws are bleeding, like from doing all of this work. I know that Who's Afraid of Little Old Me is a very dramatic song, and that it's almost intentionally dramatic to the point of like how Blank Space was. Some of the lines are meant to sound like that, I know. However, some of the other lines are very enlightening, like this. She says, is it a wonder I broke? Let's hear one more joke. Then we could all just laugh until I cry. I think she's directly speaking to feeling like the butt of jokes, you know, in the public eye, and having to have dealt with that for so long. And she's like, I am this close to just snapping and using my Tay voodoo to absolutely exterminate all the haters. A crazy way of phrasing it, but you guys understand what I'm saying. And later in that song, she's like, I was tame, I was gentle, till the circus life made me mean. Don't you worry, folks, we took out all her teeth. Being a woman, being in the industry, being in the public eye, like people have just tried to like file all her nails down, take away all her sharp parts, smooth her until she's just this like perfect image who just like takes everything that everyone says and deals with it. As women, I think we can all relate. As men, we can probably all relate. As humans, we can probably relate. And she's like, we took out all our teeth. No, you didn't. Actually, you should all be afraid of me. Again, I love this song, so I could go on and on with this song specifically, but even in I Can Do It With a Broken Heart, right? She's like, I'm a real tough kid, I can handle my shit. They said, babe, you gotta fake it till you make it, and I did. Lights, camera, bitch, smile. Even when you wanna die, girl. Even when you wanna die, girl. I think sometimes that's a little bit of self-abandonment, feeling like you have to abandon yourself all the time for the crowd, for the fans. Like, her getting up and performing when she's deeply depressed is kind of a form of self-abandonment. It's very virtuous, and it's very much like, I'm gonna follow through on the commitments that I made, but it also is like you're kind of abandoning yourself, and you're kind of just like going through the motions. And I imagine being in the industry as long as she has, like that she's had to abandon herself at so many different points. So like, your hair is too short, your hair is too long, wear dresses all the time, act perfect, don't date this person, don't do this. You just have to shed these pieces of yourself that you might love or that might feel important over and over again. And honey. And I'm like, we're still talking about Maddie and Joe when we got shit like this to digest? No, girl. And lastly, on this theme and topic, I mean, Clara Bow is the clearest example of this. She's literally like, oh, I just am imagining this song very much as like reminding her of being in offices with like very high level music execs. And they're like, oh, you're the next big thing. You're the next Clara Bow. You're the next it girl. And how they just bring women in and just say this shit to them over and over again. Like, you're the next big thing. You're the next big thing. And it's like, just the inevitable fact that at some point, some executive is going to be like, you're our next Taylor Swift, you're our next cash cow, you know? It just feels like such a suffocating environment to be in, and so tragic and so unfortunate. And I hate that we put this it girl status on women. We don't do this shit to men. So I get why you're mad, Taylor girl. I see you and I respect it. But yeah, that whole theme of just the public eye, the music industry, the expectations, the burden, like that is a huge theme throughout the album. That is something that we need to dissect. We need to sit with it. We need to eat it. We need to be grateful that we were afforded this insight into her life. Again, Matty Joe, Ratty Healy, or like Joe, no offense, the most boring man that ever lived. It's just like, I don't care about that right now. I'm just not interested in that when we have such other important things to digest and discuss. Like the fact that we're dealing with some addiction on this album. We are addressing things that we are feeling and things that we're going through. I mean, the very first line on the album is literally from Fortnite. I was supposed to be sent away, but they forgot to come and get me. I was a functioning alcoholic till nobody noticed my new aesthetic. Girl, it offends me that even I did this, so it's no shame. It's no shame, it's no disrespect to anyone, but it does offend me that we have an opening line like this and we're still just like, but who is the song about? Is it about Maddie? Is it about Joe? Is it about Calvin Harris? Is it about Oprah Winfrey, Barack Obama? She's saying, I was a functioning alcoholic and this is how I want to open the album. Remember earlier, she said Fortnite was very representative of the entire album as a whole. Why are we not talking about this? What? Baby girl was going through some real shit, not just internally, but also I feel like she was dealing with partners with addiction. And if you've known anyone who's dealt with drug or alcohol addiction, or really any other kinds of addiction, it's so difficult, so harmful, so painful. That's its own kind of heartbreak over and over and over again. On TTPD, the Torture Poets Department, she says, you smoked, then ate 7 bars of chocolate. You know, on The Smallest Man That Ever Lived, she says, in public you showed me off, then sank into stoned oblivion. She also says you tried to buy some pills from a friend of friends of mine. On Chloe or Sam or Sophia or Marcus, she says, you turned me into an idea of sorts. You needed me, but you needed drugs more. I mean, she's spelling it out for us, people. She's dealing with a partner, someone that she loves, someone that she cares about, who is addicted to shit. And it is negatively impacting their life. I've never heard, really, correct me if I'm wrong here, but someone who's addicted to different kinds of drugs or alcohol, and they were having just an absolutely amazing time in their private life all the time. I don't think so, you know? So I feel like she's expressing the fact that she's dealt and understood some of the pain of addiction, and I think we can start to understand some of the themes that maybe drove that, but also that she's dealing with somebody who's also dealing with that. It makes sense to me now when I look at the Fortnite music video. All the filming is in black and white, and it just has this very sorrowful, woeful tune to it. It's almost like, how could you not feel like you're crazy when you're trapped in these cycles of addiction and depression and all of these things, right? I mean, our girl was really going through it. Speaking of going through it, that's our next theme. Girl was really down. And you can attribute all of that to men, or you can attribute a lot of that to like her own lost dreams for her life, dealing with somebody who is very depressed, dealing with somebody who's dealing with addiction, dealing with perhaps things in her career that she wasn't loving. It's just like there's so many things contributing to this other than just men is what I'm saying. In Fortnite, she literally says, right? All my mornings are Mondays, stuck in an endless February. Girl, who wants to be stuck in February? February is like, in most places I've ever been, one of the most depressing months of the year. It is just gray. And I'm like, in So Long London, we get a very interesting look at her mental state. She was like, I saw in my mind fairy lights through the mist. I kept calm and carried the weight of the rift. Pulled him in tighter each time he was drifting away. My spine split from carrying us up the hill. She is actively choosing this other person over and over and over again, even though it's not healthy, even though it might be a toxic dynamic, and just shouldering the weight of that all herself. So I feel like a lot of the visuals of like her being in the asylum is almost, she doesn't even know who she is anymore. She's so abandoned herself and so lost herself to the people in her life that she's like, who even am I anymore? Where do I even locate myself in space? Which is illustrated again in Alchemy, which is a very happy song, generally speaking. But the beginning is like, what if I told you I'm back? The hospital was a drag. To me, it's almost like she feels like in this space, regardless of what relationship this song is talking about, like she's finally reemerged into a place of color and joy and reclaiming herself, not abandoning herself in all of these little ways, to the music industry, to the fans, to her relationships, to addiction, you know? I mean, are you people, are you tracking with me, people? Keep up. In Down Bad, she literally says, I might just die, it would make no difference. And I know she's like being over dramatic and hyperbolic for reasons of emphasis, right? However, there's enough of that theme going around where it's like, depression is not within the realm of existence, right? And even when she frames the album and she made all those playlists, it's like depression, denial, bargaining, anger, all of those different things. And I feel like those are such ripe themes throughout the album. And it's not just the men and their issues that caused all of this. It's this feeling of anger that you get even at yourself when you're in a relationship and you abandon yourself for them. You give up your own wants, needs, whatever, for their wants and their needs. And that is extremely angering and very disappointing and also depressing. You know, it's not just the loss of the person, it's you mourning the loss of yourself. Facts. Put it on my gravestone. So overall, I could have made this like a 900-minute video, but I'm trying to be a little bit more precise and concise lately. But I'm just trying to say is please re-listen to the Torture Poets Department and just put these men folk out of your mind, honey. We don't need them in every song. We don't need to be attributing them to every song. Like for this album specifically, I feel like there's so much interesting commentary on Taylor Swift as a human being, the things that she's dealt with, the things that she still struggles with, the things that make her mad. And it's like, aren't we all interested in Taylor Swift, girl? I'm not buying Matty HOT's album. Lord knows I ain't buying no Joe Alwyn album. So that's my take for today. Much love to all of you, and I'll see you next week.